Welcome everybody back to another round of Power on the Hour. We're very excited. I'm actually getting used to this. I can imagine actually waking up at 2 o'clock in the morning, think, oh, when's the next thing of Power on the Hour coming? Is it happening now? But we've got a really wonderful show coming up for you now. We've got an incredible guest speaker I'll speak about in a moment. But before that, you all know why we are here. And we are here because Seed are trying to raise £900,000 in 30 hours. We smashed through our initial goal of £600,000, and now we're on to our bonus round where everything is going to be doubled. We are now just about £765,784. We are well on our way. Now, I would just like to introduce our next speaker, Rabbi Rubinstein, who is a famous, world-renowned international lecturer and speaker who has humored many people far and wide. Let's bring Rabbi Rubinstein into the studio, please.
Hi, how are you? It's so exciting to be with you.
Careful. The social distancing thing. Are we close enough?
No, it's me. Hello.
We're okay?
What do you mean I've humored lots of people? That rather sounds as though there are a lot of stupid people out there who I've been humoring.
Well, you know, I speak for myself only.
That's for sure. It's so nice to be in England.
We know you were brought up in Glasgow, right?
In
Glasgow. Yeah. I see you've also lived in Gateshead, also had a stint in Liverpool, in the US. You're now in the US?
I'm in New York. I'm in New York, in Long Island.
In New York. Beautiful. Yeah. So what is your favorite place out of all those places you've lived?
Gibraltar.
And why?
Gibraltar.
Wow.
Yeah. Yes, my favorite place is Gibraltar. I love the community in Gibraltar. I think the people are absolutely fabulous, and it's fantastic. And that's my favorite. It's my favorite community. But you know, I'm open. I'm open to finding new communities. So after the coronavirus is over, if you're watching me in Alaska and you want a really good speaker, I'll come.
Incredible. Now, of course, we've been reading your bio, and we've seen that you have spoken in front of quite an illustrious different audiences you've had over there. Can you just tell us? In fact, I think the Queen calls you. What is the Queen call you?
The Her Majesty, the Queen, bless her, came to Manchester just about 10 years ago, just before we were about to escape to the colonies, and she was introduced to the Jewish community. They're all lined up, and she came to the president. She shook hands and she said, "Is Rabbi Wawa here?" And he went, "Oh, no, ma'am," looking at his secretary with hatred for not having invited me. "Oh, what a pity. We listen to him all the time on the radio, and we think he's awfully good." So there you are. The Seed doesn't just get any old rabbis at the top of the hour, but one rabbi who the Queen herself actually asked to meet. And can you blame her?
Wow, that's an incredible story. Incredible. Now, okay, so without further ado, then I'll just hand over to you to share some words of humor, words of wisdom, words of inspiration for all of our listeners and watchers, viewers.
Thank you very much. Well, first of all, it's a serious pleasure to be part of Seed again. I started off being part of Seed when I was in Gateshead, just next door from to Rabbi Grunfeld. It's always been that. It's a lifelong connection, and it's a joy to be part of what you're doing and raising funds for Project Seed as well. So as I usually fly around the world speaking, and I can't at the moment, I thought I would reminisce about my first ever trip to Canada, which I like because it was created by a man from Glasgow. Anyway, so basically I got off the plane from New York. It was quite a small plane, and about 30 people, and they were sort of like wandering, tired, it was late at night, down the sort of like the corridors into the immigration hall. And I saw a guy about 50 yards ahead of me. I would say he was Indian, Pakistani, that sort of fellow. And there were 4 guys standing there with bulletproof vests, a Hawk and Kessel, or whatever it's called, Hawk and Hessel, or whatever it is, submachine guns. The name's irrelevant. The thing is, they fire bullets. And we're standing there, and as that guy approached them, they went like this. And he sort of went, and off he went. And I thought, wow, look at that, a terrorist. That's really, wow, I've never seen that before. And when I got up to these guys, one of them looked at me and he went, Phew! And moi, I said, trying to impress him with my French. Wrong part of Canada, he said, grimacing at me. So I followed the guy from India or Pakistan and went into this big, big room. And it rather resembled a banking hall. And instead of bank tellers smiling, there was immigration officers with bulletproof vests and little guns, or big guns. Actually, the more I looked at it, the bigger it looked. And there was one of those, you know, those things at airports. Do you remember? Do you remember places called airports? Do you remember those days? Anyway, so they had one of these sort of barriers that goes like a snake all the way around. And that guy was already at the front waiting, and there was nobody else there. So I thought, I'll sneak underneath the barrier. And then I remembered the machine guns. So I went all the way around, and I was standing behind the guy at the front. And everybody just totally ignored us. So why did they bring us here if they're going to ignore us? And eventually there was a young lady in front of me and a fellow. The young lady looked up and motioned to the guy from Pakistan to come across and face her, which he did. And then the fellow next to her came up from looking at his computer, he's probably playing computer games, and told me to stand in front of him, which I did. And then they both went back to playing in their computers. And I looked at the fellow from Pakistan and looked at me. And then eventually the lady turned to the fellow beside me and said, "Sir, I'm an officer of the Canadian government. It's my duty to make an assessment of a person's eligibility to entering the country. In your case, I've made an assessment of your eligibility and I find that you have none. You're therefore being sent back to the United States." And he said, "I'm not going. You've got to make me go. I totally refuse to go. I'm not going." Now, he seemed to annoy her a little because she said, "Sir, you don't seem to be listening to me. I'm an officer of the Canadian government and I decide who enters the country. I've made my decision in your case and you're not entering the country." He said, "I'm not going. You've got to make me go. I'm totally staying here." Now, she must have had a secret button under her desk, which she pressed without anybody noticing, because to the right, a door opened in the wall, which I hadn't noticed. And out came two of the largest human beings I'd ever seen in my entire existence. It was obvious to me that the immigration service of the Canadian government recruits exclusively from the lumberjack community. And these two big police officers came and grabbed this guy under the armpits and started to haul him away with his knees dragging on the floor, shouting, "I'm not going, I'm not going, I'm not going." And he went. And then suddenly my guy looked up and said to me, "What's your reason for being in Canada?" And I said, "I'm here to deliver a lecture." And quick as a flash, he said, "On what topic?" And I said, "Marriage." And he said to me, "Are you for it or against it?" Which I thought was very funny. And I said, "Well, I'm married." And he said, "So am I. Are you for it or against it?" So we both laughed and he stamped my passport. And that was my first ever entry into Canada. 1 year later, I was back. I didn't get arrested by the SAS paramilitaries, Rapid Defense Force, whatever they were called. But I went straight into the main hall along with everybody off. It's a much bigger plane here. There was a couple of hundred people. And there were 3 booths in which sat 3 immigration officers, again, wearing their bulletproof vests. And I thought Canada was a nice place, and their guns. And we were arranged into 3 different queues, lines, as they say over here. And there was 3 immigration officers. There was a fellow from India or Pakistan, not my guy from before. There was a lady, that was black, and in the middle there was a white guy. And I got the white guy. Eventually it came my turn. I went to the front, and he looked at me and he said, well, I already knew he was going to say it because I've been here before. He said, "What's your reason for being in Canada?" And I said, "I'm here to deliver a lecture." And he said, "Are you a rabbi?" And I said, "Yes, I am." And he said, "I'm a Rasha." And I said, "Pardon?" And he said, "I'm a Rasha." And I said, "A Russian?" He said, "A Rasha. You're a rabbi, right?" I admitted it. Yes. He said, "You know, in the Haggadah, at Passover, Pesach, the 4 sons, the Chochem and the Tam, and the one who doesn't know how to ask, and the Rasha, I'm the Rasha." And he started to tell me his whole life story, including the fact that his great-grandfather came from England, was a rabbi. and how they'd gone to New York and he hadn't been treated nicely, and there he was today. And of course, the line, when two Jews get together, they talk for a long time, and the line started to get huge behind us. Everybody else was going through, but there's about 400 people backed up to the jumbo jet that had just landed, waiting for us to stop talking. And eventually he stamped my passport, and I went through. And I wondered, but what was his real story? How did he get and end up being the guy that was so proud to declare, I'm a Russia? And I honestly don't know the answer. I can tell you his name because now I notice his Jewish name on his bulletproof vest. But wondering about his background, what really were the causes that robbed somebody of their Jewish identity, don't really know. But one thing I definitely know, from my first days back in Gateshead when Seed first came and Rabbi Grunfeld brought it to the UK till today, Seed has been absolutely remarkable in reaching out to people who've lost their Jewish identity and welcoming them home again and supporting them once they've come home. And all the programs that I see whenever I'm in England, if they ever open the airports and I can come back, that are run in that building, it's absolutely fabulous. Seed is just the best. So I want to tell you something, which is a little bit religious. I hope you don't mind me if I do a bit of religious stuff. But I found a very interesting Gemara in the Talmud, in Bava Kama, and it's page Samachamad base. It says a very interesting thing. If there is an epidemic in the world, if there's a plague, if there's a coronavirus, then don't walk in the middle of the road, because that's where the angel of death walks. And, well, you don't want to bump into him. Well, I certainly don't. Oh, not yet. And so therefore, don't walk in the middle of the road. Walk to the side. I was learning this with Michael Brusa, who's also a rabbi, and he said, what is that talking about? I mean, let's face it. When's the last time you walked in the middle of the road and bumped into the angel of death? Well, I mean, I suppose actually, depending on where people drive, but it doesn't make a lot of sense. And I thought that perhaps it's referring to the fact that the Rambam says, quoting another Gemara, that the best way, the way we should always run our lives, lead our lives, is the middle path, not one extreme, not too extreme to the right, not too extreme to the left, in the middle, balance. As they say in Yiddish, the mittlische derech, the derech emtsoi. That's the ideal. However, when there is a coronavirus going about, then the commentators say there, no, but the middle derech, the middle approach, the average approach, that's not the correct approach when there's bad stuff going around. You have to do a little bit more. We all have to do a little bit more. One of the commentators says, and what particularly? Chesed and tzedakah. And so, Project Seed is nearly at its target. It just needs a little bit more help. And that's why I'm so thrilled to be here. Because we should all try, if we can, and some of us can, but we should all try to do a little bit more. Because I honestly don't know an organization which has just sailed through the decades, consistently being relevant to the people that it serves, welcoming people back who don't know very much about being Jewish, or catering to them and helping and supporting them when they've already made that journey. It's been an absolute pleasure to be back in England, if only virtually. And it's a thrill, as always, to be a friend and a little part of Project Seed, Rabbi Grunfeld's great organization, and all the fabulous people who work for it. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you very much, Rabbi YY. Thank you very much for those lovely, inspiring words and thoughtful words, and the thanks. I'll definitely make sure that Rabbi Grunfeld saw them. Yeah, really appreciate you coming. And we hope to see you again soon.
Carry on the fabulous work.
Thank you, thank you. And that really is what we are doing here today over the past 24 hours now, coming up to the home straight here as we're closing in on our target of £900,000. We are pushing ourselves that little bit further. We're pushing and we're trying to reach out to as many people as we can. So if you can please help us in what we are doing to try to raise the money to continue allowing us to inspire other people and bring relevant and meaningful and educational and inspirational programming to young families in Anglo Jewry throughout the United Kingdom. We have programs. Then please like and share and subscribe and put it all out there and send out the WhatsApp messages and put it on your Facebook and put it on your Instagram. Let's flood social media with this campaign and help us to get our target. You can make a donation right now. If you're on the charity website streaming this live, then just scroll down a little bit, put in a donation, make sure it's triple figures, and click donate. And if you are not on the website, then you can go to www.charity.com/seed UK. And if you want to do to my personal page, then you can do another / and put in Peretz and Sorella Goldstein. Thank you very, very much for your time. And up next, we have another wonderful presenter who is going to be coming on. We are now going to be having at 6 o'clock, we will be meeting the wonderful Ilana Yahav, a sand artist extraordinaire, who is going to show us, have a brief interview and show us some of her wonderful artwork and creations that she makes with sand. That will be at 6 o'clock. Make sure you don't miss it. We will see you then.